Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Coffee with Sales Engineers. As you'll notice, we're taking a different approach this year. So we will continue to bring sales engineers who have amazing stories and backgrounds and experiences of how they fell into this role. But in 2025, we're going to shift a little bit. In addition to those stories, we want to bring leaders and experts, people that are innovating in technology and bringing the right technology to sales engineers and people that are helping develop sales engineering talent. So with that topic in mind, I'm super excited to welcome Steve Bullington to our podcast today. Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, sir. Pleasure to be here. Yeah, so my official title is Director of Solution Engineering Talent Development. And that's a very long way to say my focus is really on helping move people into the profession of solution engineering. And I do that, our team does that through really three programs that we kind of own. Our primary program we run is something we call the Scout Academy, where we train, recent college grads to serve as solutions engineers. We're heading towards our 7th year. We're in our 14th cohort. We've had 265 people go through the program.
Wow.
And it truly is what gets me out of bed every.
You are a university on its own with that many candidates going through the program. That's amazing.
Yeah. So to complement that, a few years ago, we started a program we call RISE, which stands for Readying Internal Solutions Engineers. And the idea behind that was we had a lot of people coming to us saying, hey, I know so-and-so, they would really like to be, a solution engineer. How do they go through your program? Well, the Scout Academy is really designed for somebody within that first 12 months of graduating from college. So we took the assets that we had built for that and really created kind of a extracurricular training activity for our current employees. So the idea is that, they all are bringing a lot of internal Salesforce skills to the job, but how do we empower them with the right solution engineering skills? So customer-centric discovery, demo, those things. And that's been not only incredibly rewarding, but it's been successful as well. And then the third program that we run is an internal training program where our SEs train other SEs, and we call it the Black Belt program. And so we have subject matter experts that train their peers on products that may be outside of their day-to-day, role, but, they become kind of that first line support for the rest of their solutions engineering team in that specific products.
That's amazing.
Between the three of those, it keeps us busy pretty much 365 days a year.
I like the third one. Teaching is the best way to learn, right? So having those SEs, the subject matter experts, be empowered to pave the way and teach others, that sounds really amazing. I given what you just said, Steve, I can tell that you have macro trends of these masses of people that you're experiencing and watching their journey evolve. But before we go into it, when I was looking at your LinkedIn, I mean, you've done, academic, you've been, sales. Your journey really started from sales engineering. I don't think 20 years ago you were thinking, one day I'll be leading these three programs to help sales engineers. How the heck did you end up in the sales engineering world?
Yeah, well, I've been fortunate, and I started working with sales engineers going back to about 1997. And so I had them supporting me when I was an individual contributor, and I led them as a sales leader. So I had tremendous respect for the profession, going way back. My journey to where I am today really started about 12 years ago, when I decided that I wanted the next portion of my career to be focused on talent development. As a sales leader, I always felt like that was my strength, is, helping my team get better. And so I was very fortunate. 10 years ago, I had an opportunity to go to a software company that was based here in Indianapolis called Interactive Intelligence. At the time, the chief revenue officer wanted to start a sales university program to train recent college grads to be account executives. And I was very fortunate to be brought on to to build that. So we built that I built that program from scratch, ran 2 cohorts, set up our first summer sales internship program. Everything was rolling along very nicely. And then, as always happens in tech, we got bought by one of our competitors and they didn't want to do that anymore.
Right.
So at that point, they shifted me over. I ran global sales onboarding for about a year and a half. But I had truly kind of found, my place in life, running an early career talent program. It's a very big difference doing a global sales onboarding where, you've got 35 or 40 people in a room for a week. And then 6 weeks later, you have another 35 or 40 versus an early talent program where, at that point in time, I had 8 recent college grads. I had them. It was the 9 of us in a room together for 4 months.
Yeah.
I got to know them. I got to know their families. I got to know their dogs. I got to know their girlfriends, all that, and just truly found a passion for it. Fortunately, Salesforce had decided, and we had a very forward-looking executive who wanted to start to bring in younger talent into the role, bring in more women, bring in more people from underrepresented groups. And quite frankly, nobody goes to college to be a solutions engineer.
That's right.
So she recognized that in order to bring these people in, we were going to have to give them some additional role specific training that college didn't prepare them for. And so I was very fortunate to be brought in to help as part of the initial team to start this. At the time, we used to have everybody move to Indianapolis. For that first cohort, we had 50 people. They spent, 6 months here in Indianapolis, and we trained them up and sent them off into the world, and, kind of continued in that vein for up until March of 2020. And then COVID started a pivot. And so now we run smaller cohorts. We run usually 10 to 15. We run
Okay.
them twice a year, but we do it in more of a hybrid model. So we do a lot of the daily content online, and then we bring them together for 3 weeks, 1-week experiences over the course of their 5-month training. And as I said, we've had 265 people start the program, and are seeing now the fruits of having people move into their 3rd and 4th promotion,
Yeah.
uh, and it's from some of those early cohorts. So
That's amazing.
yeah,
That's really that's unique, and I know only big companies, mature companies can even offer this type of flexibility and program. Most of the companies I've worked at, there were sales training, and
yeah,
SCs were invited to
yeah,
attend the sales training, and there weren't really topics that were SC specific, right? It's like we were kind of co-learning with our sales reps. I'm sure all the cohort members kind of benefit from program curriculum, the whole process designed around the profession itself. That's great. So you've seen so many people kind of come in, graduate, get promoted, see successful career. Over the last couple of years, have you seen any trend in where this sounds like there's raw talent you're attracting with this program, and outcomes, a polished outcome, a sales engineer professional, solutions engineer professional. What are some trends you've observed, like where they're coming from, any diversity, anything like that? Have you seen anything?
yeah. So we've been incredibly fortunate. Our one of the goals when this was set up and the idea came up 8 years ago was, exactly around diversity. 58% of our participants have been women, and about 55% have been from underrepresented groups. So, if you think about it, if your recruiting strategy is you're just going to take folks that are already at Microsoft or Oracle or Adobe, then your staff profile is a direct reflection of their staff profile.
That's right.
So if all they're hiring is white Anglo-Saxon Protestant males, that's what your staff's going to look like. So you have to find a pivot point where you can start to change that. And in our case, it was, the Scout Academy to go in and change it. But as I look at kind of the broader landscape, not just at Salesforce, but with all of the companies that I've had the pleasure of interacting with through things like the Pre-Sales Collective and other groups, I am seeing a very dramatic shift of inclusivity and bringing in, talent that, probably were not considered in the role 10 years ago. Because when I look back to to 1997, and the first major group that I worked with was sales engineers. Um, there was maybe one woman,
Yeah.
and the rest were guys that look like me.
Some of this is also reflected on the background that often people, hiring managers, kind of look for, right? And especially in tech sales, probably was used to be less women because it was the engineering background that people looked for, and most engineering schools back then were predominantly male. Have you, and obviously I love the fact that on the podcast, I've brought in, individuals who were, a chef or
Yeah.
math teacher. Have you seen, is there any one profession that you're seeing a lot of shift from? Like, I remember one of the podcasts, somebody mentioned that when we had the real estate downturn, right? A lot of the real estate agents who were good at presenting and sales kind of moved into tech. And if they had the technical mindset, they geared towards more of the
Yeah.
sales engineering. But have you experienced their, non-engineering programs where these cohort members are coming from? Or
Yeah.
different professions that they're coming.
So I'll kind of separate it between, our early career folks and just the broader community that I see. Our early career folks, have come from a wide variety. My favorite was, I had a colleague that came through the program, and she started her university career as a ballet major. And then she got a back injury along the way, and she shifted and ended up with a technical background. But here was this really amazing professional, but she never saw that being her journey.
Right.
And so, I think the good part is, particularly if you have a well structured training program, you can take anybody with kind of that has that demonstrated ability to learn and prepare them to be successful. Now, that being said, as AI becomes much more a part of everybody's day, we are looking to find a greater balance between the business side of it and the technology side of it, so that we are tweaking our profile a little bit. But we're also, at that same time, there are more women going to college today than men. I think about 2-to-1 ratio across the United States. So we are seeing many more women who are coming out of computer science, MIS, those types of backgrounds, than certainly when I was an undergraduate 40 years ago.
Yeah.
On the kind of the non-early career, what I'm seeing more and more of is people who are coming into the role from being the user. So
Mm.
I was the Salesforce administrator in our case at
Interesting.
major a major sales firm, and now I'm gonna bring that skill over here, and I think there's tremendous value in that, because they walk through the door with
You can relate?
unlimited credibility that,
Yes.
"Let me
Instant.
tell you my history. I worked at XYZ company, which is one of your competitors." Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think that's great. My favorite is, I have a colleague that came through the program that she was a 3rd grade teacher, and I have just the utmost, while I hate to see people leaving the teaching profession, if you can explain math to a 3rd grader, you can
Yes.
explain software to anybody.
And think about, like, one of the teachers, I didn't relate it to at that point, but I remember he was on the podcast, was talking about, look, teaching a class, you're managing kids, and this was like
Yeah,
younger kids. So that ability of reading the room, identifying who's making noise, who needs to be controlled. I mean, you show up for a demo or presentation with a broad audience. I mean,
yeah,
you're kind of doing that. So if you
absolutely.
if you can read the room and control the room, that's so important for our profession. Also made me think of, obviously you have this program where the input, when people apply, right? They go through this program, and they're set for life. I think about, like, where are people learning? Even, like, how do people get awareness that there is this program at Salesforce that I can go and apply if I have the raw skills? Because a common theme that I hear from the podcast is most people, including myself, always say, I wish I had known about this profession 5 years earlier. Right. So I think, to your point, there's no engineering. So when kids are growing up, right, their parents or even elementary school or middle schools are not saying, you
Mm.
take this STEM course. So in the future, you'll become a sales engineer. And, maybe that'll happen one day. But for now, it's word of mouth. It's, learning about, from friends. So I think eventually that'll change as well.
Yeah, I mean, when I go back to my undergraduate career, which is many, many, many years ago, there were no sales majors. You
Right.
couldn't go to college. They would have,
And that was
yeah,
it.
or they would have a class that was in the marketing department.
Right.
And that was your choice. And now there are, I think, 70 universities where you can get a sales major, and there's several hundred that have some kind of accreditation.
Yeah.
Well, I think we will get there. I know I had a conversation with a professor at Duke a few months ago, and he taught his first sales engineering class this past
Nice.
fall, and they are looking to fully incorporate it in it. Now, it's interestingly enough in a master's program, but I think, that's a plus. And I just had a conversation with a sales professor at Indiana University earlier this week, and they are starting a sales engineering kind of
That's amazing.
track within
Yeah.
their sales program. So I think it will get there, but I think, we've got to continue to get the word out more that, hey, this is a viable alternative. And I'll tell you, quite frankly, we don't have any shortage of applicants
First.
when we post for a cohort. It's overwhelming,
Yeah.
the response that we get. So what we really need is we need more companies building out programs like this,
That's right.
that can take advantage of this outstanding young talent that's out there.
Versus the opposite of what you see often is you just hire for the like. Like hiring managers would reject an application, not even look at it if somebody doesn't have sales engineering background. And it's that's kind of feeding the problem. It's the chicken and egg. If you don't give somebody an opportunity to be a great sales engineer in the first place, how will they prove that they can be a great sales engineer or solutions engineer?
Yeah, I mean, that was the point of our RISE program. Is we had these people. I mean, we've had people that had 10 years experience, but they were in customer success.
Right.
And, I would argue those skills are almost totally translatable. So what we needed was a certification that would, be recognized internally that, hey, these people are prepared to take on these roles. And, in fact, a great example, we had a woman who was a customer success graduate of our program, because at one point we had customer success in the Scout Academy. She had graduated from that program almost 6 years ago and been in customer success ever since. Came to us and wanted to move into solutions engineering, and not only got through the program, but then got a lead solution engineering role, because she had that much strength around the product. So but she needed the demonstration. She had those specific solution engineering skills that would unlock that.
Yeah. Yeah. Without the program, she would have never known. All right. Last question. You have seen so many sales reps in your journey. You've seen so many sales engineers. What are top three characteristics when you think about, oh my God, this individual, he or she was one of the best sales engineers or one of the best sales reps? What are top three qualities that come to your mind about both sales engineers, solutions engineers, and sales reps?
I would say two of the three are the same for both of those roles. So I'll start with solution engineering. To me, the number one is technical aptitude.
Mhm.
You don't have a master's in computer science or whatever, but you have to be very comfortable learning whatever the next thing is. I finished my master's degree in information and communication sciences in 1999. If I would have stopped and said, okay, I have this master's, I don't need to go pick up anything else,
Right.
I'd be totally irrelevant today, because literally 95% of the
That makes sense.
technology I learned about is not a thing anymore. You have to have somebody that wants to continue to learn and has the aptitude to pick it up. And that to me is on both sides. So that's both the SE and the sales rep. The second thing is just an innate curiosity. You've got to not only want to be learning, but you have to be really interested in the person you're sitting across from. And
Mhm.
again, that's for both the SE and the AE. Because if I'm working a vertical, so I'm working financial services and I work with small, medium-sized credit unions, their problems probably are not going to be dramatically different from one credit union to the next.
Right.
But I have to demonstrate the same amount of interest with every small credit union I go sit down with.
Yeah.
And then I have to be interested in, a broader expanse, not just, hey, I know everything about our technology. I need to know what's going on in the market. I need to know what's going in politically with broader technology themes, all of that. So being just intensely curious, I think pays off for both of the roles.
Yeah.
The third one is where I would split it a little bit. And, the thing that I would say is they both need to be great communicators, but it needs to be in two kind of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
For the solutions engineer, they have to be great explainers.
Mm-hmm.
Back to my colleague that was a third grade teacher. One of the things that makes her an amazing solutions engineer is she is really great at explaining things in ways that are meaningful to the audience.
Right.
And so you've got to be that really great explainer. And if you're an account executive, you've got to be a really great question asker.
Mm-hmm.
And the SE does too, but you've got to get them through that first third of the buying journey, which is building up interest. Well, that's making those connections, because if you can't get there, we're not going to need the solution engineer, because there's not going to be interest there. So, when and I go back and I started in a leadership role when I was 25 years old, and I learned very, very quickly that those were the three things that I was always looking for
Yeah.
with everybody that I've ever interviewed. Because if you bring those three things to the table and you tie that together with a solid work ethic, we can get you where you want to go.
Yeah.
But if you're missing any of those core components, we're just going to fail. And that's how that's the reality of it.
Spot on. Spot on. I mean, obviously you've seen so many of these characters and those all resonate. And I think from the AE standpoint, always be questioner. This is something I'm experiencing as now the chief revenue officer of an early stage startup, is the listening. It's ever
Absolutely.
discovery. And it's discovery really never ends. And we have this perception that, oh, in the early stages of the sales cycle, you discover and qualify, and then you tell and show and demonstrate. And the reality is that, because of that intellectual curiosity, you're always learning about the prospect and looking for ways that you can add values. Those were amazing three favorite characteristics. Thank you for sharing those insights and sharing your journey with us, Steve. Really appreciate having you on the podcast. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.